Natalie Sideserf here of Sideserf Cake Studio, and I'm going to show you how I made a cake of a Supply Llama from Fortnite. I don't know a lot about Fortnite, but I do know that this llama is f***ing cute. This cake is great because we're using edible wafer paper to replicate tissue paper just like a real piñata. So let's get started. I cut down 2 cardboard cake boards to 2 inches by 5 inches. This little cake board needs to hold the cake up while resting on 4 little wooden dowels, and that means that it needs to be pretty sturdy. So I glued 2 pieces together. And that's going to strengthen that cake board, and then it's time to glue wooden dowels that are cut at an angle right onto the bottom of that cake board. Look, I made a mini table. Next, I covered the wooden dowels with foil tape. Not only is the foil tape going to secure the dowels to the cake board, but modeling chocolate sticks really well to the foil. And we are going to cover these in modeling chocolate. You can also use masking tape if you don't have foil tape. Now that all 4 legs are covered in foil tape, then I'm going to go in with blue modeling chocolate and I'm going to cover each of the wooden dowels. I noticed in the images that I found online of the Fortnite llama that the legs were squared a bit, so I went in and actually squared each leg. And looking back, I think it would have looked just as fine if I kept them rounded, but you know, you live, you learn. The squared legs took me, you know, a little while to actually sculpt. Now that all 4 are covered, it is time to stack the cake. I cut 2 1-inch thick layers of cake down to 2 inches by 5 inches, which is the same size as the cake board. And the only sculpting you have to do with this cake is just rounding out the top of the butt just a little bit, and that's it. It's time to cover the cake in buttercream. So with an offset spatula, I just have some light blue buttercream and I just cover the entire thing. So covering cakes in buttercream can take some practice. With this cake, you don't have to be too anal about it though, because we are just going to cover, you know, the entire thing with modeling chocolate and then wafer paper. But before we do that, I cut out a section of the Piñata llama's back. So I took a small round cutter right through the back and I took it out and then I filled that in with sprinkles so that when somebody cuts into this cake, the sprinkles are going to kind of fall out. It's gonna be a fun piñata surprise. The head of the llama is made of a solid piece of modeling chocolate. I use my template to cut out the basic shape of the head, and then once I have that, I go in and I sculpt some of the details like the jaw and the nose. I really like that this guy's bottom jaw kind of juts out. I think it makes it really funny and really adorable. And you want to go in and add his nostrils, keeping it simple, and sharpen the edges. Next, you grab the old lollipop stick, you place it right through the neck, and then you place the head right on top of that. And then I use my parchment template to make sure that my size is pretty close. And then add the chocolate ears and blend those ears into the head. Now with a refrigerated cake, you're going to cover it in modeling chocolate. I went a little Frankenstein with this, but just like we didn't have to worry too much about being perfect covering the body with the buttercream, we don't have to worry too much about being perfect when we cover this with the modeling chocolate, because we are just going to add one more outside layer, which is going to be the pretty layer, and that's going to be of wafer paper. I added the teeth and the eye details with white and black modeling chocolate, and that will complete the face. With some purple powdered food color, you can brush that around the eye, and it's going to create a nice dark shadow. And then when you add that little black dot, it always makes the eye. Really bringing him to life. Onto the wafer paper. I love wafer paper. It has a super mild vanilla taste, so it doesn't really affect the flavor of the cake very much, but it is the absolute perfect edible material to create like a really fun crafty paper effect. So I cut blue and purple 1/2-inch strips, and then I snip away about halfway in and 1/4 inch apart to create the little piñata strips. The reason we covered this llama in modeling chocolate instead of just adding the wafer paper to the buttercream is because wafer paper will not stick to buttercream. I've tried. But it does stick to modeling chocolate if you brush a small amount of clear corn syrup onto the chocolate first. So it's like edible glue. Add the wafer paper in sections starting from the base of the neck. You want to work your way up, starting from the bottom, so that you can overlap the layers really easily. If you start from the top, then you have to kind of shove the wafer paper under the previous layer, and it's like a huge pain in the butt. I switched the colors based on the images that I have pulled up on my laptop. There's no really right or wrong way to do it, but I just kind of estimate about how many blue and how many purple I want to add. If you like tedious work, this one's for you, because it is pretty tedious adding all these little layers. The face is almost done. We just have to add the black modeling chocolate harness. So one strip is going to wrap around the back of his head behind his ears and then right under his chin. And then there is another one that goes over the top of his nose. I have this really fun tool that creates this stitching effect. So while it's not absolutely necessary, I like to use it as often as I can because I think it's super fun. Then you add the little black dots on the side. That's that little bit that's in his mouth. And then as you can see here, I started from the top, like a goofball. I made the mistake of putting the wafer paper on the top, and then I corrected myself, went back down to the bottom, and started layering. So again, you want to start from the bottom, work your way up, and you're adding alternating purple and blue layers until the entire llama is covered. I decided to airbrush some darker purple and darker blue areas onto the llama, and this is another one of those things that isn't absolutely necessary, but I just happen to have an airbrush and some edible food color, and I figured, why not? Finally, the last thing we're gonna make is the metal saddle, and that is gonna be made out of modeling chocolate, and it is 2 different shades of gray. One is a light gray and one is a dark gray. And you want to keep this kind of simple. It's pretty basic shapes. You can see I have this white powder on my hands, and that is just cornstarch. I rub it on my hands because it helps keep the chocolate from sticking to them. Then you place the harness right on, and with just a little water on the back, it'll stick really easily. And then you put the arrow on. And there you have it. It's a Fortnite Piñata Llama with a fun sprinkle surprise, and it is stinking adorable.